So, wir kommen gleich von einer Transformation zur nächsten, weil wir hatten den Titel gesetzt From the Industrial Age to the Intelligence Age, die große Transformation. Und unser nächster Sprecher hat dieses Thema umgenannt in From Power to Bug to Power to Brain. Und es handelt sich um keinen geringeren als Dr. Hendrik Brandis, Co-Founder und Partner bei Earlybird, die ihr alle kennt. Mindestens alle Youngster sprechen, wann spricht Hendrik, wann spricht Hendrik. Hendrik, du passt zu Industry Meets Academia, zur MMK-Konferenz wie kein zweiter, weil du fokussierst tatsächlich auf Deep Tech und Enterprise Productivity und du selbst hast sogar einen Doktortitel in Luft- und Raumfahrt, ein Thema, was wir neu auf die Agenda genommen haben und gestern sehr umfangreich besprochen haben auf der MMK-Konferenz. Und ich bitte um einen ganz großen und herzlichen Applaus für Hendrik Brandis. Ich möchte dazu sagen, dass wir mehr und mehr aufs Englische skippen und bei Vorträgen, und du hast gefragt, soll ich Englisch oder Deutsch machen? Ich finde das super, dass wir mehr und mehr auf Englisch machen. Wir haben einige Vorträge und ich glaube, das ist auch the way to go, nachdem wir vom Professor Friedl auch wissen, dass auch unsere Studenten zum guten Teil aus internationalen Ländern kommen. Voila.
Okay, vielen herzlichen Dank für die Einladung. Danke sehr, dass ich hier sein darf. So I'm trying to switch to English. For me, it's coming back home. I feel rejuvenated. Almost 40 years back, I would say, when I started here in the Technical University of Munich. And I see even some alumni from back then in front of me. So it's a great pleasure and honor to be here. So the title I've suggested is slightly different, as Franzi said. It's From the Power to the Buck, so from the importance of capital to the power of the brain. So I want to suggest a thought that in future for innovation, brain power does increasingly make more difference, is more important than capital as it was in the past, and that's from the mouth of a venture capitalist. So the basic thought is that we're living in times where we have an exponential growth and an exponential acceleration in the speed of the creation of new technologies. We are, as venture capitalists, thinking in platform technologies. A platform technology is something which serves as a platform for many, many new innovations and startups. And if one looks at the frequency with which these new platform technologies are created, then there is an undisputable acceleration of that. If you can just look at this as an example, and the most important things is in the line at the bottom. I was raised in a phase where every 10 years, every decade, there was a new significant new platform technology, which has served the environment for a lot of new, fundamentally new technology companies. If you think back to the personal computer as a base for Apple, the basis for Adobe, Microsoft, and so forth. All these companies have been created on the top of the innovation of a personal computer. And then there was the area of the new internet, serving Google and the like, Amazon, as new significant tech companies being created. And if you then do a fast forward and look at the density with which new platforms are coming into play now, this is 5x of what we had back then. And I don't see any reason, and I don't see any trend that this acceleration is slowing down. So maybe in the future, we probably will be seeing a situation where we have annually new platform technology, maybe even semi-annually, coming up things such as AI, virtual reality, crypto, cloud, what have you. And the same, and maybe is it chicken or egg, I don't even know, at the same time, but even one as a driver for this is that we experience the fade out of entry barriers to participate in this ever-accelerating process of innovation. If you think about information, it was in earlier times we had proprietary data belonging to expert organizations, and now we're seeing a situation where we have ubiquitous availability of these innovations. If you think about infrastructure, it was the privilege to be in the position to work on mainframe computers, to even do all these calculations necessary to create new technologies. And nowadays, everybody and his dog has access through cloud computing to basically infinite computing power. And if you now think about the third dimension of skills, the introduction of AI is actually helping us to come from proprietary skills and experts sitting in certain expert organizations in R&D departments, making that available and accessible to everybody who's aspiring to participate in the innovative process. So that altogether leads to a democratization of innovation. Innovation does not belong any longer to expert, specialized organization. It is ubiquitously available, it's everywhere. Everyone, all of a sudden, is in the position to participate in that innovative process. And that obviously multiplies the number of participants and accelerating the speed of innovation. It is also, if you think about, it's a framework we're using, if you think about the cost of innovation through the support of yet developed technologies is coming down. We call this the cost of experimentation in creating new things. And there are step functions in. If you go back to the internet has decreased the cost of experimentation for new innovations. And the same thing has happened once we had introduced the cloud. And now, this is another step we are taking through the introduction of AI, which facilitates and simplifies innovative processes and accelerates everything and reduces the included cost, again, driving speed of innovation. The scalability of innovations and new technologies is exploding. I always find that chart impressive. If you look at the time which has been needed to reach just 1 million users. In 2000, well, we were talking about years. In 2023, as a most recent example here on this chart, we were talking about hours. Think about what that means with respect to the distribution, the acceleration, to the. It's really exponential, and that altogether lead to a shift in paradigms, and that is basically the core what I try to get across. It is about the creative minds which are becoming the key bottleneck for the technology in the future, for innovations. Just, you know, as a visual impression, if you think about what it means, if you count all the R&D stuff of the global MSCI companies in tech, you count something like almost 2 million people working in these R&D departments. And if you compare that just with the number of people who are regularly storing professional code at GitHub, you're talking about 150 million. And this is for sure not the entire population of democratized participants in innovative processes. And what we are experiencing in these days is we're getting from the black dot to the red circle and beyond. And that drives innovation. The creative mind is actually what really makes the difference. And now I'm stuck here. Okay, you can also see it in another example. If you look at the number of cities now in Europe which had created unicorn tech companies in 2011, just 8, to the situation in 2021, just 10 years later, we're talking about 65. I do not have the number of 2025. We're probably talking about 80, 90 people. And cities, not people, 80, 90 cities. So we see an activation also of the non-urban regions. Another another sign for the democratization of innovation. All of a sudden, through the fade out of entry barriers, everybody can start to participate. You do not need to be in expert organizations. You do not need to be in the hotspots, in the hubs of innovation, in the big cities. You can be everywhere. And we also see it in the topology of our investments. Back then, in 2011, we have done 80% of our investments in Europe in the 5 main hubs. So London, Paris, Berlin, Munich, Barcelona, Stockholm, 6. That number of 80% has come down to below 40% in the last year. And it continues to go down. Just exemplifies the fact that we are living in a more democratized environment for the creation of innovation. So we all complain a little bit, and we regret, complain, I don't know, maybe also complain, but we regret that Europe is a little late into this new tech play. But the good message is we're catching up. So growth rates in Europe are, relatively speaking, above other main regions, in that example, above what we see in the US. But obviously, we're still lacking significantly behind, despite the fact that we are 2x, 3x growing faster, but from a low basis. The main bottleneck we have to solve in Europe is late-stage investments. If you look at the left side, the different level of late-stage investments in billion US dollars, this is a different order of magnitude, and this is actually the core reason why we haven't seen an example in one of a magnificent 7 out of Europe, because we're lacking the means, the growth capital, to make our fundamentally great innovation here in Europe scale and bring them to global relevance. We are not bold in the later phase, and we're missing out on the significant investment to really make globally leading tech companies, which is something we have to work on. I think it is understood for the time being. It's not yet solved. The other good message is, besides the fact that we are growing overproportionally, despite from the fact that the basis is small, is that I personally believe that the acceleration of technological innovation has become so significant that the deployment of intrinsically sluggish capital is making less and less of a difference. And the smartness of the brain can outpace what capital can achieve. I think a recent example, probably all of you have seen, is an impressive evidence for that in my eyes. We all remember the announcement of Stargate in the White House, with Sam Altman talking about $500 billion being invested in data centers to train new AI systems. And a couple of days later, DeepSeek was jumping out of the bushes, claiming that they have used old processors which are outdated, and have trained an LLM with just $6 million into a status which has been competitive with what OpenAI and ChatGPT could provide. So I do not know whether it has been really 6 million, or even if it would have been 50 million, it would still have been significantly lower through a smarter structure of the LLM in comparison to what ChatGPT and OpenAI has done in the past. And if that is true, and it is true because you can measure the performance of DeepSeek, $500 billion of data center investments will probably not make the difference anymore in that dimension. And you can find many other examples where we see the same thing. if you think about nuclear fusion, there are traditional nuclear fusion attempts, and they eat up billions, tens of billions of capital in order to come closer to commercialization. There's a very famous nuclear fusion startup in the US, Commonwealth, which has consumed $2.5 billion in venture capital. And they have not yet reached fusion state. And all of a sudden, and they're all pursuing a certain paradigm in fusion. They're trying to reach 100 million degrees in the plasma because everybody knows then fusion processes starts. And the way to introduce and to ignite the plasma is heating it, or to magnetic confinement, or making it hot. And all of a sudden, there's a startup out of Munich and Paris, because it's based on a Nobel Prize which has been granted to a French professor. And they come up with a total different idea and said, we do not heat anymore to initiate fusion processes, we accelerate. They have found ways to accelerate protons to almost light speed in order to initiate fusion processes. And the outcome is, it is way cheaper, it is simpler, and it gets you much quicker to commercialize or to a commercialization of fusion energy. And that startup can achieve fusion processes with $100 million or $150 million. We're not talking about billions anymore. All of a sudden, the amount of capital does not make the difference. It's the approach which makes the difference, which allows you to achieve more with less. And that's why I'm saying I do think that the paradigm is increasingly changes from the power of the buck to the power of the brain. And if that is true, there's hope. There's good hope for Europe, because at least in that dimension, Europe is very competitive. We have the privilege to have at least more students, a lot of science, and very high qualified people here in Europe, which should give us the foundation of being successful in innovation in the future, increasingly, and if I compare that to what we have achieved in the past. Thank you.
You can. Thank you. It's always good to end with a positive note, and I would allow for 1 or 2 questions to Hendrik, as we have you here, and give it to the audience. Anyone? Now is your time, your chance. There's one. You want to have my mic? No, the mic is coming. Just behind you. Whatever.
Thanks. English or German?
Ich glaube, wir können alle auch Deutsch oder Englisch. Was du bevorzugst?
Egal.
Okay, dann mache ich mal auf Deutsch weiter, genau. Und zwar, wenn man sich Beispiele wie Trade Republic anguckt, wo insbesondere amerikanisches VC in deutsches Wissen reinfließt, wovon dann letztendlich beispielsweise amerikanische Pension Funds profitieren, was wir in Deutschland eigentlich genauso gut für Wohlstand und Co. gebrauchen könnten. Wie sieht Ihr Blick aus VC genau zu diesem Problem aus? Weil, wie Sie gesagt haben, das Brain ist ja hier auch in dem Land. Und wie schaffen wir das auch in dem Land zu kapitalisieren?
Ja, also ich bedauere das genauso wie Sie. Es ist tragisch, dass wir unsere eigenen, also es sind ja 2 Dimensionen. Erstens, wir haben nicht genug amerikanisches Geld. Es ist besser, amerikanisches Geld für europäischen und deutschen Innovationen zu haben, als gar keins. Also ich würde noch mehr amerikanisches Geld einladen. Noch schöner wäre es allerdings, wenn wir es mit unserem eigenen Geld, das ja grundsätzlich da ist, es fließt nur woanders hin, wenn wir das dafür zur Verfügung stellen können, weil wir dann nicht nur den Vorteil der finanzierten Innovation hier haben, das können wir auch mit amerikanischem Geld machen, sondern, wie Sie richtig sagen, würden dann die Rückflüsse, die Renditen aus diesen Innovationen auch in Europa und in Deutschland bleiben. Hier mit amerikanischem Geld fließen die raus. Das Know-how nicht notwendigerweise, aber teilweise das übrigens auch. Beispiel Marvel Fusion habe ich vorhin gesagt, die Finanzierungsrunde ist im Wesentlichen aus USA gemacht worden und die haben gesagt, naja, ist wunderbar, machen wir gerne. Vorbedingung ist, der Demonstrator steht in Colorado. Und das ist schon mal ein größeres Problem, weil dann natürlich die ganzen Physiker in Colorado sind, das Know-how fließt raus und so weiter. Bei Trade Republic ist das kein Problem. Aber die Benefits fliegen raus. Also der einzige Weg ist, dass wir versuchen müssen, unsere eigene Kapitalbasis, die groß genug ist, zumindest inkrementell in Richtung von Wachstumskapital umzulenken. Also wir müssen uns die Frage stellen, wenn die deutsche Versicherungsindustrie 300 Milliarden Euro pro Jahr neu investiert, jedes Jahr, und das praktisch ausschließlich in Staatsanleihen tut, ob das die richtige Allokation des Kapitals ist oder ob es nicht schön wäre, wenn davon 10, 20, 30 Milliarden tatsächlich in Innovation gehen. Übrigens auch zu ihrem eigenen Vorteil. Auch die Versicherungsindustrie tut das nicht, weil sie es nicht will, sondern weil unsere eigene Regulatorik, in diesem Fall Solvency II, eine Umallokation verhindert, weil nämlich man davon ausgeht, dass Staatsanleihen grundsätzlich komplett risikofrei sind und deswegen null Eigenkapitalunterlegung brauchen, während man bedenkt, wenn man Wachstumskapital investiert, ist das Geld weg in dem Moment, wo man es investiert hat und muss 100% Eigenkapital unterlegen. Das kann sich die Versicherungsindustrie nicht leisten, also geht sie in Staatsanleihen. Können wir ändern, morgen.
Vielen herzlichen Dank. Also wir merken, Brain und Geld bitte ist in diesem Raum reichlich vorhanden und wir wissen jetzt, wohin damit. Ich glaube, jetzt ist die Zeit für das nächste Panel und wir bedanken uns sehr, sehr herzlich bei dir, Hendrik.
Gerne.